Lake District is both a national park and a World Heritage Site with over 900 square miles of space and is protected because of its beautiful countryside, wildlife, and cultural heritage. I spent a recent bank holiday weekend camping and hiking in the Lake District, and although the weather wasn't fantastic, it was such an amazing weekend. I wish I had more time to explore it since the Lake District is a huge area, way bigger than I thought, so I wasn't able to see it all, of course, but I was able to get a taste and I loved it. It's always nice to get out of the city and escape into nature to reset for a few days. So in today's video, I'm going to give you a guide to the UK's Lake District to help you plan your first trip to the Lake District, including things like how to get there, where to stay, or like a guide to the different areas, some hiking options, and more. So first, let's talk about how to get there. You have two main choices. Option number one is to take the train from London to Windermere, the biggest lake in the Lake District. This is the fastest but most expensive and also limits what you can kind of do in the area unless you decide to rent a car once you're already up there. From London Euston Station, you can get up to Windermere in as little as 3 hours and 15 minutes, and train prices vary from about 45 to 100 pounds one way depending on how far in advance you book, what day you're traveling, and if you have a UK rail card or not, which you can find out more about rail cards in the beginning of this video. I'm someone that usually prefers public transport over renting a car because I just always feel like a car rental is stressful, but for this particular trip, I think it's way better to rent a car, both for the price and for the freedom. So that's of course option number two, and the price will of course depend again on where you're renting it from, how far in advance you book, and what days you're booking it. We booked ours about 10 days in advance for a bank holiday weekend, and it was £240 for 2 days, which included 2 drivers and insurance, which honestly is kind of a lot in my opinion, but there were 4 of us, so it wasn't that bad per person once we split it up. So I'd try to plan more in advance and not go on a holiday weekend to make it more affordable, especially if you are in a smaller group. One thing I would say, if possible, is rent the car outside of London for 2 reasons. Number one, London is just super busy and filled with cars, so of course it's a little bit more difficult to drive if you're not experienced driving through those narrow streets. And number two, you will have to pay a daily congestion charge of £15 both when you leave and come back to London in your rental car. So if you rent the car outside of London, you'll automatically save yourself £30. We had to rent ours from Heathrow Airport as we were returning the car on a bank holiday Monday. Most other car rental companies were closed on that day, so we had to pay this charge as Heathrow is technically the last part of the zone that has to pay. Of course. So pick somewhere that's easy and cheap to get to right outside of London and in the direction of where you're going. For example, our friends recently went to the Cotswolds and took the train to Slough to rent a car, so it makes things easier and slightly cheaper. So to recap, you have the train, which will take about 3 hours and 15 minutes and cost each person about £100 to £200 round trip, or you have a car rental, which will take you about 5 hours and cost about £60 to £100 per day, which can be divided by how many people you have in your group. Alright, so now let's go through my guide of the different areas of the Lake District. As you can see on the screen, there are 8 main areas that you can visit in the Lake District. Number 1, Coniston Water. Number 2, Derwentwater and Keswick. Number 3, Grasmere and Rydal. Number 4, Langdale Valley. Number 5, Northern Lakes. Number 6, Ullswater and Glenridding. Number 7, Westwater and West Coast. And number 8, Windermere and Ambleside. Unless you have a solid week or more here, it's going to be really difficult to get to see all of these different areas, especially in depth. As I said in the beginning of the video, we went for the weekend, so we really only had a day and a half here if you exclude the driving to and from London, and we were able to briefly see areas 2, 6, and 8. So of course, since I haven't been to other areas, I won't speak about them as I don't want to give correct info, but I will say that after doing a ton of research before the trip, everyone said that if it is your first time going and you only have a few days, Ullswater and Windermere were the main places to go. And after going, I do agree, I highly recommend them. And then if you have some more time from there, you can see some of the different areas. So let's dive a little deeper into each of the 3 areas that we went to, starting with area 2, Derwentwater and Keswick. And I'm also going to include Thirlmere in this one as well, since it's kind of right there. So Keswick is one of the bigger towns in the Lake District, and it's super cute. It has tons of restaurants, pubs, shops, so it's a great place to have your home base if you prefer a hotel over camping. camping, or pick a campsite nearby so you can easily access the amenities. We personally didn't book a campsite before arriving, which I don't recommend doing, so we were trying to stay in the Glenridding area, which I'll talk more about in a little bit. We had 2 campsites saved that we really wanted to stay at, but both ended up being sold out by the time that we arrived. So then we ended up staying at Gill Head Farm Campground, which is very close to Keswick. I highly recommend this campsite as the owner was lovely and the facilities were really great. For pitching a tent, it was £13 per person per night. So if you do pick Keswick as your home base, make sure to check out the Dog and Gun Pub. It's famous for its goulash, but it was actually the steak and ale pie that blew us all away. We have 2 Americans and 2 Irish in our group, and we all agreed it was the best pie we had ever had. Besides the nice town of Keswick, we also have Helvellyn in this area, which of course is one of the lakes, but also has a ton of hikes in the area, and I'll go more into detail about the different hikes in a little bit. Now let's talk about Area 6, Ullswater and Glenridding, which I just mentioned. This is where we originally wanted to stay, as there are so many campgrounds in this Glenridding area and a ton of hiking starting points, but unfortunately we weren't lucky enough to get a camping spot. I would recommend looking into Side Farm Campground, as I've seen several videos on social media and it looks so beautiful, and also Gillside Camping Ullswater, which also has really nice facilities and a breakfast truck on site. It also has one of the Helvellyn trails right next to it and is a short walk to the village center for food and drinks. Ullswater itself is one of the bigger lakes in the Lake District where you can swim, kayak, paddleboard, or go boating if you have good weather. And lastly, we'll talk about Area 8, Windermere and Ambleside. Windermere is the largest lake in the Lake District, and for you fellow Taylor Swift fans out there, she has a line in her song The Lakes that says, "Those Windermere peaks look like a perfect place to cry." So I was super happy to go just for that. The lake itself is really nice, but it's the only place I felt was really touristy, as they have tons of companies offering boat tours on the lakefront and a big ferry boat that takes you around as well. So if you're interested in a boat trip, this would definitely be the place to do it. There was also a really cute coffee shop we went to right on the water called Waterhead Coffee Shop, which had the most amazing scone covered in rum butter, which I had never had before, and I highly recommend it. And close to Windermere is Ambleside, which was my favorite town that we visited in the Lake District. It was one of the biggest towns for sure, and not only had tons of restaurants, pubs, and bakeries, but also had so many shops for clothes, shoes, souvenirs, and stuff like that. So personally, if I was choosing to stay in a hotel on my visit, I would stay here, as there's so much to do, as it's very well located. You can easily get to other parts of the Lake District along the A591. One other thing to note is that right outside the Lake District is a small city called Penrith, which has some huge grocery stores and tons of shops and restaurants. It might be a good option for a hotel if you're trying to save money, since it's not technically in the Lake District, but it is super close. If you are looking to camp, you can browse all the different campsites within the Lake District National Park on their official website, which I have put in the description below, and they have other sections for booking hotels, hostels, cottages, and B&Bs too, if that's more your style. Now let's talk about getting around the park. Like I mentioned before, I really recommend renting a car. This will not only save you money in the long run coming from London rather than each person paying for a train ticket, but it will also allow you to have so much more freedom to explore all the different parts of the park. But if you don't have a license or don't feel comfortable driving in the UK, there are year-round buses that run in the most popular valleys like the Borrowdale, Langdale, Grasmere, and Coniston. These are the 555 bus to the heart of the Lake District, the 599 bus from Bowness to Grasmere, and the X4 and 5 Penrith to Keswick. And there is a cap of £2 per single journey until December 2024, which makes it really affordable. Now let's talk about what to do. Obviously, this depends on what interests you, but we're in a national park, so everything is going to be revolving around nature, of course. First up, we have water activities. If you're there during some nice weather, which, you know, who knows, we're in England, right? You can drive a motorboat, paddle a kayak, or take a cruise on Lake Windermere, Coniston, Ullswater, and Derwentwater. We were there in May, like I mentioned, and the weather was just awful, so I'd really make sure you're in the heart of summer if you want to do water activities. The other main thing to do here is hike, since there are so many incredible viewpoints around the area for you to enjoy the lakes and the peaks. Like I said before, you could be in the Lakes District for weeks solely focusing on hiking, and you probably still wouldn't be able to do all the hikes off offered in the area. There are just so many, but for your first trip, you want to make sure you do one of the most iconic hikes in the area, which would either be Helvellyn or Fairfield Horseshoe, which are relatively close to one another as you can see on the map. We opted to do Helvellyn, so I'm going to go into more detail about that hike in case you're interested in doing it too. So once you've decided to hike Helvellyn, now you have to decide which route you want to hike since there are several. We had read online that the easiest route to Helvellyn is via Thirlmere because it avoids the rock scrambling or bouldering, however you prefer to call it, that the other routes have. However, it is not easy at all. Like, I consider myself a pretty fit person and it was the most challenging hike I had done in a really long time. Let me pull up the trail map for you and give you some key details so you're fully prepared. You want to park your car at the Swirls car park, but the confusing thing is there are two. So make sure you park at one that looks like a proper lot, like with a bathroom, not one that's just a few spaces right off of the main road. The hike starts from this car park, and as you can see on the map, you have the option to do the full loop or pick a route and go up and back. We went up the steepest, quickest path and then continued on to complete the loop, and this is the way that I would recommend doing it. Going up is extremely steep. I really want to emphasize that and make sure everyone is aware of what they are getting into. About 3/4 of the hike up is almost just like rocky stairs, and then the last fourth is a dirt path with loose pebbles, and it gets a little bit flatter. We hiked this on a terrible day, so the entire hike we were just in fog, and then you get to the top and you're supposed to be rewarded with this amazing view, but this is what we actually saw. Just all fog, no views, which made the ridiculously hard, steep hike absolutely not worth it. So my honest advice is that if it is foggy or rainy, I wouldn't waste your time at all with this hike. It's way too difficult of a hike to not be rewarded with views. After we got to the top, we continued the full loop, and this side of the hike is a lot longer, but a lot flatter and more of like a dirt path rather than stairs. It was actually the prettiest part of the hike for us since we didn't get views up top. So if it does happen to be foggy for you, I'd recommend just walking along this part of the trail to get some beautiful lake views with minimal effort. If you do the full hike, it's a total distance of 9.3 miles or 15 kilometers, takes about 5 hours to complete, and has an elevation gain of 819 meters. So of course there are so many hikes to do and places to explore within the Lake District. As I've said many times throughout this video, you can be here for weeks and not see it all, but as you're planning your first trip up there, this will help you understand all the basics and have an amazing time. If you're looking for another outdoorsy hiking option to get outside of London, check out the Seven Sisters, as it's only 1 hour away on the train and is easily doable as a day trip.